Welcome to today's edition of the Rush 24/7 podcast.
Man, oh man, what is John Brennan paranoid about? What in the world has got him so bothered? Hint, hint, we know. But man, is he acting out. This is the former CIA director under Obama. And he's acting like he is the head honcho of the Trump opposition and Trump resistance, and he may well be. But Trump is getting under this guy's skin like I haven't seen. Greetings, great to have you, Rush Limbaugh and broadcast excellence. Yes, sirree, Bob, my friends, the next 3 hours will go by faster than anything you can remember. They always do. Fastest 3 hours in media. Telephone number if you want to appear, and everybody does, 800-282-2882. If you want to send an email, we check them. The address is rushbo@eibnet.us. So yesterday, President Trump tweets out that he thinks it's outrageous that the FBI, the DOJ, would be spying on his presidential campaign. And he demanded, and he followed through on it today, that the FBI and the DOJ open an investigation to get to the bottom of it. After the president tweeted that, we got this from John Brennan, who once voted for the Communist Party candidate for president and who is, let's just say he's dubious. In my mind, this guy's dubious. He's an extreme leftist and a wacko in a number of ways. His tweet, Senator McConnell and Speaker Ryan, if Mr. Trump continues along this disastrous path, you will bear major responsibility for the harm done to our democracy. You do a great disservice to our nation and the Republican Party if you continue to enable Mr. Trump's self-serving actions. All Trump's doing is reacting to the drive-by media. The drive-by media last week, New York Times and Washington Post, both outed a spy, an informant, in the Trump campaign. The president simply responding to what was in the drive-by media, demanding an investigation to find out what's going on. By the way, we now know there's a little wrinkle here that I need to add to these stories, New York Times, Washington Post. You remember when those stories hit? One of the initial reactions a lot of people had was, why are they doing this? And everybody said it's because the Inspector General report's coming up, and they're trying to get this stuff out in advance to limit the damage so that when the IG report comes out, it's old news. Oh, yeah, the Times had that last week. Nothing to see here. Except the Inspector General report is not about this. The Inspector General report is about the Clinton email investigation at the FBI. Now, there may be some overlap of personalities, Comey for one, but the two investigations are separate. So that can't be the reason for these stories. You know what the reason was? Before these stories took place, you remember this? Devin Nunes, House Intelligence Committee Chairman, and Trey Gowdy have been demanding Nunes for months to see one thing. Nunes wants to know what the hell it is that triggered this investigation. What is it? And they have not released the document that explains what triggered the investigation. Now, about that, as I keep jumping off into tangents, but fear not, because I always circle back to the center of the circle. Andy McCarthy had maybe one of his best columns ever on Saturday at National Review. In Politicized Justice, Desperate Times Call for Disparate Measures. I would actually love to read this whole thing to you, but I'm not going to because it's very long. But we're going to link to it at rushlimbaugh.com. It was posted early Saturday morning. You should read it. Andy's point, one of the points he made, reminded me of something. He has stripped bare all of the confusion, the camouflage, the feints and the fakes, and has zeroed back to what he thinks is the stated reason for this investigation, the whole thing, and it isn't Papadopoulos being set up by Stefan Halper and all that. They tried that as an explanation, but Andy doesn't believe it. When Andy explained what it is, it triggered my incredible memory for things that have happened on this program. McCarthy's theory is that the real beginning of this investigation that they want us to believe is when the DNC server was hacked. The RNC server, they attempt to hack, it was thwarted, but the DNC server was successfully hacked. And from that point on, what did they tell us? They told us the Russians hacked the DNC server. And then, lo and behold, it wasn't long before John Podesta emails started populating WikiLeaks, which then led those emails to be published publicly in American drive-by media and all other media. Except the problem with it is the FBI never examined that server. Remember, the DNC wouldn't turn it over. The DNC would not turn that server over. Nobody knows what's on the DNC server because Debbie Blabbermouth Schultz and whoever was running it refused to turn it over. And James Comey at the FBI said, oh, okay. And instead they hired a third-party outfit called CrowdStrike. The Democrats hired a bunch of people to go out and do the forensic exam of their server, and we were told that the Russians hacked it. They still have not shown us any evidence of this. There is not a shred of evidence that's been presented that that actually happened. So when Andy wrote about this, I remembered having discussed this very thing on this program. So I started an in-depth search of RushLimbaugh.com. And I went out there and I found it. It was June 26, 2017. And I want to read to you from my transcript of what I said on June 26th of 2017. Quote, me, the Democrats are all being urged to walk back from it now, folks. I mean, everywhere, even Adam Schiff, members of the Democrats are being urged to drop it, meaning impeachment, move on to something else, jobs, the economy, what have you. A Harvard poll shows that 2/3 of the American people are fed up with the story. This was a year ago. They don't think there's anything here, and they think it's damaging the country. It's a Harvard poll done by Mark Penn, former Clinton pollster. He's got another blockbuster piece today, which we'll get to. He's been on the warpath trying to get the Democrats to stop this by using several polls, this one being the most recent, that they're going down a dry hole if they run for re-election, try to take the House on the basis of impeaching Donald Trump. And look at what else I highlighted in this. Me, again, quote, I think so much of this stuff is made up, and I'll tell you the proof of that, or a good indication of that. The FBI, the NSA, the CIA never bothered to even ask to see the Democrat National Committee server, which ostensibly was hacked by the Russians, not the RNCs, the DNC. That's the story. The Russians got in there, hacked the DNC computers, and they made no effort, the FBI, Comey, to say, we want to see it. The DNC refused them. Comey said, okay, fine. Sorry, you can't see it, Mr. Comey. And that, by the way, I said in June of 2016, quote, that, by the way, is the only evidence we have of Russian meddling anywhere is the DNC server. And that's it. And Andy's piece, and let me tell you about Andy's piece. Andy's piece, and he's a prosecutor, this piece of his is the opening statement, witness interrogation, and closing statement that would wrap this up if Andy McCarthy were in charge of all of it. It nails it. Again, it's called in politicized justice, desperate times call for desperate measures. And it's easy to forget things as they go by, because we're being urged to forget things. Our minds are being clouded with the injection of distractions. I think, for example, the New York Times and the DOJ outing their spy, Stefan Halper, I now think that was a misdirection play. I think it's designed to get everybody looking away from what the FBI and John Brennan, see, I don't want anybody seeing. And that is the whole premise for this whole thing is not Carter Page. It's not the Steele dossier. The whole premise is that the Russians hacked the DNC server. And to this day, every Democrat in this country and every Democrat member of Congress believes it. Nobody doubts it. Everybody accepted it, and we have never seen any evidence of it. And Devin Nunes has been demanding just that. And if this guy has been more courageous and has exhibited more guts than a member of Congress in recent memory has, he has stayed focused. And I firmly believe that the reason the New York Times and the Washington Post ran those stories last week outing their spy was an attempt to blame the leak on Nunes. Timeline again. Nunes, for weeks, months, has been demanding not much. It's not a whole lot of documents. He just wants to see from the FBI, the DOJ, what is it that you people have that started this whole investigation of Russian collusion with Trump? And they have yet to produce it. So last week, Nunes and Gowdy were finally invited up to the DOJ where they thought they were going to be shown the documents. Remember, it turns out they were not shown the documents. And another meeting was set up. So Nunes and Gowdy leave. And then it's a day and a half later that the New York Times and the Washington Post publish stories about a spy from the FBI, the DOJ, in the Trump campaign. And I am convinced that they tried to have those stories sourced to Nunes. They wanted to make the case. The only reason they invited Nunes up there was to try to expose him as a leaker. They knew they were going to leak these stories. They have Nunes up there. They don't show him anything. He goes away having not seen anything. Then these stories hit, and the next objective on their part was to lay blame at the feet of Devin Nunes for having leaked what he had been told or seen. And they were going to savage him as a leaker and destroy his credibility. And he figured out what was going on in time to put the kibosh to it and is now refusing. There's another invitation to go up there this week, and he's refusing any more invitations until he is going to get a guarantee that they're going to show him this document. So let's go to audio soundbite number 4, because Nunes was on Fox Business Network on Sunday with Maria Bartiromo. And it's about a 10-minute piece, but we pulled one clip here. Bartiromo said, "You said this was the mother of all leaks conducted by the Department of Justice." And again, he's talking about the leaks that led to the New York Times and Washington Post stories, detailing everything the spy did. They just didn't name the spy. But they named us. They told us the spy met with Carter Page. The spy met with George Papadopoulos. The spy had connections with the Australian ambassador. The spy this, the spy that. So everybody knew it was Stephen Halper, and basically the New York Times Washington Post confirmed what I had learned a previous weekend ago and told you about. There it was. Their attempt was to blame all of those stories on Nunes leaking. And Maria Bartiromo asks him, "You said this was the mother of all leaks conducted by the Department of Justice. What are you referring to?"
There were two mainstream media outlets on Friday night that had lots and lots and lots of details. If any of that is true, if they ran a spy ring or an informant ring and they were paying people within the Trump campaign, if any of that is true, that is an absolute red line. There is not an honest person in this country who can believe that taxpayer dollars going to fund this ring and operate like this, like what's said in the New York Times, would have quite a bit of detail on it. If any of that is true, there's a red line in this country. You can't do this to political campaigns. If they paid someone, it's an absolute red line, and this is over with.
Well, they admitted it. They admitted it. And remember, everybody thought this was to get it out to lessen the impact when the IG report comes out. The IG report's not about this. It's about a Clinton email investigation. They leaked this in an attempt to harm Nunes. And in the process of leaking it, they confirmed that there was indeed a spy. There was a spy in the Trump campaign. So Trump tweets about it, and he's livid, and he's demanding an investigation now. And that's when Brennan has a conniption. Senator McConnell, Speaker Ryan, if Mr. Trump continues along this disastrous path, you will bear major responsibility for the harm done to our democracy. You do a great disservice to our nation, a Republican Party, if you continue to enable Mr. Trump's self-serving actions. Trump reacted. John Brennan is panicking. He's disgraced himself. He's disgraced the country. He's disgraced the entire intelligence community. He's the one man largely responsible for the destruction of America's faith in the intelligence community. Not only that, these people have done more damage to the electoral process than Vladimir Putin could dream of. The FBI, the DOJ, the people involved here, John Brennan, everybody involved in this phony hoax that the Russians tampered with this election because they have sought to make everybody believe this election was not legitimate. That's been the whole point, and its source is the DNC server supposedly being hacked by the Russians, for which we have not seen a shred of evidence. So why is Brennan panicking? What the hell's he got invested in this? He's gone. He's not the CIA director anymore. He's out there, whatever he's chewing his cud, tilling the fields on Stephen Halper's farm in Virginia. What's new? What does Brennan care? Well, obviously Brennan cares a lot. Why does Brennan care? Well, the Wall Street Journal has a great story, a column today by James Freeman. Why aren't we hearing about Obama in all of this? This was his administration that did all this. It was his people that did all this. Why isn't anybody asking Obama what he thinks of what happened here? Well, people did ask Obama, and he said none of this was possible. We've played those sound bites for you, and we're going to play them again. As you can tell, we are just getting warmed up. And we are back. Great to have you, Rush Limbaugh, having more fun than a human being should be allowed to have. Now, the New York Times is trying to walk back some of their devastating reporting on the fact that there was a spy in the Trump campaign. You remember last week, James Clapper went on CNN and said, no, that's all hyperbole. There wasn't any spying on Trump. They were trying to find out if the Russians had involved themselves in the Trump campaign, which is the biggest crock. Because if that's true, if that's what we need to do, then when the Democrats have a Democrat nominee in 2020, let's put a spy in there. Let's deploy an informant and a spy. Let's get Clapper to agree. Make sure that no outside actors attempt to screw with the Democrat campaign, right? I mean, it would be very valuable stuff is what Clapper said. An absolute crock. Well, the New York Times had an op-ed by somebody named Asha Rangappa, a woman. Ms. Rangappa's point was, Mr. Trump, the FBI wasn't spying on you. The FBI was trying to protect you. I actually laughed out loud when I saw the headline. There wasn't any spying on Trump, just like what Clapper said. No. They were trying to protect the Trump campaign from any Russian bad guys. She said the infiltration of a U.S. presidential campaign by a hostile foreign power presents a grave national security threat of the highest order. Except there was no evidence. Do you have any evidence of Russian spying? Nobody's produced any yet. Hang on, there's more. Have you seen the former education secretary in the Obama administration, this guy Arnie Duncan? He's out there saying that until we get this school shooting stuff fixed, until we've gotten guns out of the hands of people, parents need to start boycotting schools. Hey, Mr. Duncan, you may not know this, but parents started doing that a long time ago. It's called homeschooling, and more parents are boycotting the public school system each and every week in this country. These eggheads are so far behind things. Anyway, back to this New York Times. I mean, this really is, they're trying to walk this back now because they tried to pin these leaks on Nunes. They were trying to damage Devin Nunes with this. They wanted to run stories that Nunes had exposed the intelligence community, that Nunes had put a spy's life at risk. These two stories, New York Times, Washington Post, were actually an attempt to destroy Devin Nunes. And it didn't work. So now they're walking it back. They're trying to. And one of the attempts to walk it back is this New York Times column from Asha Rangappa. In fact, a former FBI agent. Oh, yes, it's so perfect. And she says that the FBI wasn't spying on Trump. They weren't spying on the Trump campaign. They weren't using an informant. They were protecting him. Don't you see? The FBI loved Trump. They were benevolent as they could be. They loved this whole process, and they were trying to protect Trump from Russian collusion. Now, wait a minute. A, there isn't any evidence of any. But B, according to the theory, Trump was in on it. What do you mean protect Trump? Trump was supposedly in on the collusion. The whole thing falls apart if Trump is a victim. Well, it doesn't totally fall apart. I mean, they could still try to make the case the election was illegitimate. But it doesn't matter. There isn't any evidence. The second thing that you could use to throw this one out with the bathwater is, are you really trying to tell me that people like Strzok and Brennan and Clapper and all these other people like Trump? These people were trying to protect Donald Trump? Are you kidding me? For John Brennan is out there threatening. With his tweets, he is threatening McConnell and Paul Ryan, the former director of the CIA. Got to be worried that this is going to uncover stuff that these people, I am certain, never thought would surface. Because don't forget, they, I think, were convinced if they could just make credible the thought, the idea that the Russians had interfered in the election and maybe determined the outcome, that the American people would be outraged and demand that Donald Trump be thrown out. If the Russians determined who won, then it couldn't be legitimate. And I think they thought they could get this done in 6 months. And it hasn't worked out. Some other things have, but that didn't. The main thrust of this, forcing Trump's resignation, has not happened. So now they're exposed. They're exposed big time, and Brennan is obviously afraid of being uncovered. And with Brennan involved, Obama cannot be far behind. James Freeman, the Wall Street Journal today, has a column basically asking, where is Obama in all this? I mean, these are his people doing this. It's his FBI. It's his CIA. It's his DOJ. These are his loyal and devoted staffers. Why is nobody asking Obama what he thinks of this? Why isn't Obama weighing in? Why doesn't Obama join his buddies and start condemning Trump? Why does Obama join his buddies and start condemning the election? Why didn't Obama get involved here? Why isn't he backing up his people? Why aren't the drive-bys curious to talk to Obama? Well, they are, but not about this. They'll talk to Obama any time of day that he'll give them time, but not about this. They're not interested in exposing Obama. Well, here's one of the reasons why. We're going to jump back a couple of sound bites there. Let's start here, number one. I'll tell you why Obama is not involved in this and why he's not going to be involved in this is because we have this. October 18th, 2016. We're looking here 3 weeks before the election. In the Rose Garden, the White House. Obama's got a joint presser with the Italian Prime Minister Matteo Renzi. A Reuters correspondent said to the president, Donald Trump is telling his supporters the election is rigged. He's asking them to monitor certain areas on Election Day. How concerned are you, Mr. Obama, about the potential for violence? And what about after Election Day? Are you worried the results of the election may be distrusted? Now, remember, this is Obama 3 weeks before the election.
I have never seen in my lifetime or in modern political history any presidential candidate trying to discredit the elections and the election process before votes have even taken place. The notion that somehow if Mr. Trump loses Florida, it's because of those people that you have to watch out for, that is both irresponsible and, by the way, doesn't really show the kind of leadership and toughness that you'd want out of a president.
While Obama is saying this, his people are in fact running the operation. Remember, the operation, we're told, began July 16th, or maybe July 31st, 2016. That's when Papadopoulos told the Australian ambassador that he knew, because Stephen Halper had told him, that he knew that the Russians had thousands of Hillary emails. That's what they've told us. They first told us the dossier was the beginning of the investigation, but that fell apart. So at the time Obama makes this statement about Trump, he's never seen anybody so trying to discredit the elections. Remember, the deep state is already setting the table for it. The deep state's already out there talking about this. Russians investigate the DNC server had been hacked a few short months prior. And they told us that the Russians did it, for which today there remains no evidence. Nobody's ever been presented any. Nobody has seen any. We don't even know that it was the Russians that did hack. They haven't even proved that to us. All of that we've had to accept on faith, which we now don't. So while Obama here is talking about how crazy Trump is, his gang is running the operation. The Steele dossier is circulating Washington. They're plotting ways to get it in the news media. Papadopoulos has already told Stephen Halper that the Trump campaign knows that the Russians have 30,000 or thousands of Hillary Clinton emails because Papadopoulos was told that. He was set up. But Obama was just getting warmed up. He then continued with this.
You start whining before the game's even over? If whenever things are going badly for you and you lose, you start blaming somebody else, then you don't have what it takes to be in this job. Because there are a lot of times when things don't go our way or my way.
Now, contrast that with the way Hillary Clinton is still behaving. You believe she got an award? Yeah, that's exactly what these people do. They bomb out, they flame out, and they give each other awards to try to hide the disaster that they caused. So Hillary got some kind of a human rights, civil rights, plug-it-up rights, I don't know what it was, at Yale. And she donned an old Soviet hat. She can't get over it. She's still whining and crying. And yet here's Obama saying, you start whining before the game's even over. Things are going badly. You start blaming somebody else. You don't have what it takes to be in this job. Hello, Hillary Clinton. Well, she doesn't have what it takes to be in the job. She never has had what it takes to be in the job. That's why she doesn't have the job. But then this is the pièce de résistance. Again, October 18, 2016, 3 weeks before the election, Obama's team is running the Trump-Russia scandal. The dossier, FISA applications, spying on Carter Page, spying on Michael, all this stuff has already begun. While Obama says this.
There is no serious person out there who would suggest somehow that you could even rig America's elections, in part because they're so decentralized and the numbers of votes involved. There's no evidence that that has happened in the past or that there are instances in which that will happen this time.
So what happened to that? How come everybody's still forgotten this? Obama basically said 3 weeks before the election it's not possible. It's simply impossible. No serious person out there, just like Comey said, no serious prosecutor would ever bring charges against Mrs. Clinton for her email server because she didn't intend to do it. There's no serious person out there, Obama says, who would suggest somehow that you could even rig America's elections. They already were saying it, and he was running the operation. No serious person would think it possible. And by the way, he's right. It isn't. It wouldn't be possible. That's why all of this is so much hocus pocus. Your phone calls are next when we get back. I'm sorry. Hillary's award was at Harvard. It was at Yale. 6 of one, half does the other. And it was for her transformative impact on society. I mean, This is what they spent. Dan Rather bombs out with his forged documents. They arrange a brand new award to give him. He's the first recipient of a gigantic dinner to praise Dan Rather for his great, great journalism. And now Hillary for her transformative impact on society. And there's no question she's had one. It ain't good. Okay, look, let's go to the phones. I want to start here down in Boca Raton. Arnold, great to have you, sir. You're up first today on the EIB network. Hi.
Hi, Rush. You know, it's kind of amusing that an FBI agent would say they put a mole in Trump's campaign to protect him. Why didn't they put a mole in Hillary's campaign to protect her, considering that the DNC server was hacked supposedly by the Russians?
Bingo. Exactly. That's why on Friday I suggested, after Clapper makes this point, that it was a very valuable thing to have this informant in there. Well, then let's put one in every presidential campaign from now on. Since these people have set the table, the Russians can so easily affect our elections. Don't we need a spy in every campaign now? That
would seem to be the case.
Well, it's dangerous. That's a great point out there, Arnold. Brilliant point. And I'm going to tell you, it's that point, that conclusion points out to me just how much damage these people have done to the integrity of the overall electoral process. Not Putin, not Russia, these people, the deep state. I had an email over the weekend after the New York Times, Washington Post outed their spy. And these stories involve a lot of Brits. A guy named Dear Love who ran MI6. Snurdly, you know the difference in MI5 and MI6? MI5 is the equivalent of the FBI over there. MI6 is the equivalent of CIA. So Stefan Halper, boy, the news on this guy that they're leaking now. Do you I did. No, but the news on Stefan Halper. Do you know that Stefan Halper was a spy for the Reagan campaign now? Stefan Halper is who helped steal the Jimmy Carter briefing papers. They're unloading everything on this poor guy. Yeah, he's got a farm in Virginia. He's been a CIA spy and an informant, a Cambridge professor, and he is tight with the Bushes. He is tight with Bush 41, and he stole Carter's debate prep so that the Reagan team could have it. That's what they're saying about Stefan Halper. Anyway, I had somebody write, say, you know, the Brits are all over this, Rush. Why aren't they getting any blame? I said, because it's not the Brits. People are not seeing this for what it is. It's not the Brits. The way to look at this, another way of defining the deep state. The deep state is the CIA and the FBI interacting with MI5 and MI6. Or the actual way to look at that is it's Harvard and Yale and our Ivy League working with Oxford and Cambridge and Eton and all of the elite schools in the UK, because this is where our spies come from. The CIA and the FBI recruit actively from the upper crust at Harvard and Yale and Brown, Cornell, you name it. And the MI5, MI6 recruits from the same place, Oxford, Cambridge, Eton, any number of places. This is actually, when you strip this bare, the names that we've got, Stefan Halper, interacting with this dread lover, what is his name? It ran MI6. All of these people are from academia. That's where they're found. And look at what's happening to academia, and look what has been happening. Academia is going further and further left, socialist and communist. Students are being taught this stuff. I've even got a story on that factor that I'll get to later. But that's from where these spies are recruited. Professors recommend their students to the agencies who surveil and interview them for hiring. Stefan Halper, for example, dual citizenship. He has professored at Oxford, Cambridge, and at our Ivy League. He's worked for the CIA. He's worked for the FBI. He's worked for MI6. He worked in the Reagan administration. He worked in both Bush administrations. He tried to infiltrate the Carter administration. He's being he's being targeted as one of the people involved in the operation that stole Carter's defeat. In other words, this guy It's no big deal. He spied on Trump. He first spied for Reagan, for the Republicans, against the Democrats. He even sought to be placed on the Trump Foreign Policy Advisory Team. He approached a guy named Sam Clovis, who lives in Iowa. Sam Clovis, Trump advisor in 2016 through the end of the year. Big guy, very, very full face. You'd recognize him if you saw him. Halper sought the guy out, said, hey, I really love what Trump's doing here, and I would love to be on the foreign policy team. And Clovis was made nervous by the guy, and nothing happened. But that happened in 2015. But these people are all academics, or they have deep ties to academe. And they go back and forth from being informants and spies to professors and operatives and so forth. It's not so much that we have the UK aligning with us against Trump. This is academia. This is Western civilization academia. Elitists, eggheads aligning against Trump. And they are a significant aspect of the deep state membership. My friends, even when I think I'm wrong, I'm right. It was indeed at Yale University where Hillary got an award and put on that Soviet hat. But it is true, too, that she's being given an award at Harvard for transforming society, vagina hats, I don't know what. But so both things were true. I was right, actually, about both, as usual. Hi, folks, we're back. Great to have you here. Telephone number, if you want to be with us, 800-282-2882. The email address, lrushbo@eibnet.us. It is the fastest 3 hours in broadcasting. And a thrill and a delight to have you with us. Now, I'm a little bit conflicted here. I've had this story for a couple of days, and it ran again over the weekend. It's polling data. And the headline here, Russia investigation has exhausted the public. It is CBS poll showing a slim majority of Americans now view the investigation as being politically motivated. This is bad news for the DOJ and the FBI. It's actually bad news to the country if you want to play it all out. But what it means is, I don't know if this headline is accurate, actually. Russia investigation has exhausted the public. I imagine some people are tired of hearing about it. Oh, and I just got an email from a friend who just got back from Cannes. Yeah, the film festival. And he says, he's telling me what he thinks about all this stuff going on, and says, and by the way, I just got back from Cannes, from where nobody gives a rat's rear end about it. So why, it's Hollywood. Why would they? Why would you expect those dumbasses at Cannes to be concerned about this? They think Trump's guilty. They think he should go. That's it. But I know that there's probably, in this audience, I don't imagine it's that you all are tired of hearing about it. You're tired of the mainstream media presentation of it because you don't care. You don't care. These guys are these people are not causing you to lose your support for Donald Trump. You just don't care about this. So the dilemma for me is it fascinates me, and I think this stuff is so actionable. I think what has gone on here, there are people that should be in jail for a long time over what has been done here. And I don't want people to just get ho-hum about this. And getting exhausted by it is one of the objectives of the media, I'm convinced. Now that it's you don't want to jump the gun on these things, but it's clear that their original objective of forcing Trump to resign has failed. I by no means think they have given up. Do not misunderstand. But they missed the big window of opportunity. They're not going to go away. They're going to keep trying to make this happen. And even if they fail, they're not going to stop pursuing Donald Trump ever. Their objective of ruining Trump and his family and close associates will continue even after he leaves office. I'm convinced. I mean, people that do what Trump has done have to get a lesson. They have to pay the price for upending the national order like this. This just cannot be permitted to happen as far as these deep state people are concerned. But there are new developments in it each and every day. And folks, I think it's crucial that you know. And the more that you know, the more you become so familiar with it, you can explain this to other people, the better. Because it is genuinely appalling what has been done here. Let me illustrate it again. Grab soundbite 5. We're going to go back to James Clapper. Now, this was Obama's director of national intelligence. And after the New York Times and Washington Post ran their stories late last week, outing a spy, outing an informant in the Trump campaign, Clapper went on CNN to say it was a good thing, that it was a very valuable thing. And he's back again. He did it again today. He's on with Fredo Cuomo, who says the president doesn't like it, has ordered the DOJ to investigate. Are you okay with that?
No, I'm not. I think that's actually a very disturbing assault on the independence of the Department of Justice. And I think when this president or any president tries to use the Department of Justice as kind of a private investigatory body, that's not good for the country.
That's just outrageous. It is simply appalling. The president isn't trying to convert the DOJ into his personal investigatory body. He's being threatened. He's being threatened. John Brennan is threatening McConnell and Ryan, and by extension, Trump. These people are the ones that took hold of the entire investigative intelligence agency or operation in this country and turned it against a particular presidential campaign. They implanted spies. They had informants. They spread hoaxes. They lied to a FISA court with a phony opposition reason. You know the drill here. And here's Clapper thinking that we ought not investigate this. No, I'm not very comfortable with it. Well, who cares whether Clapper is comfortable with it? No, I'm not very comfortable. It's a very disturbing assault on the independence of the Department of Justice. What about an assault on the independence of the presidency, Clapper? What about an assault on a specific presidential campaign, which is exactly what this has been? So then Fredo says, well, that argument's pretty clear. They're spying on me. They can spy on anybody. This is dirty tricks. This is deep state. This surveillance that he feels happened in Trump Tower, even though we don't have any proof of it. It's how they look at the FISA warrants, the dirty deeds. These are members of his party who backed this. What's your concern about the probe?
The big thing here is this is not about spying on his campaign. It's about what the Russians are doing. Were they attempting to infiltrate the campaign? And that was the concern.
Why do it that way? If the concern was the Russians are trying to get to the Trump folk, why not go to them openly?
Well, this is one of many techniques you can use or bring to bear, the FBI can, in the interest of determining whether there was active efforts on the part by the Russians to infiltrate the campaign.
He's lying through his teeth. They were no more concerned about the Trump campaign then than they are now. This is an out-and-out lie. No, we weren't spying on his campaign. It's about what the Russians are doing. Were they attempting to infiltrate the campaign? Well, then why didn't you have a spy in the Hillary campaign if the Russians were trying to tamper with the election? And if the Russians were trying to cause Hillary Clinton to lose? Then why didn't you put a spy in her campaign to protect her? Because after all, that's what we were told, that the Russians wanted Hillary to lose. These people wanted Hillary to win. So why didn't they put a spy in her campaign to protect her? Now they try to tell us, oh, no, we weren't spying on the Trump campaign. We were trying to protect the campaign. We were trying to protect the integrity of our elections. It's a very valuable thing to have a spy in a campaign. Well, then let's put a spy in every campaign going forward. And let's have a permanent special counsel, Mr. Clapper. Let's hire Mueller and make it his job. His job is to investigate every presidential campaign going forward after every election. Since you people have told us that we can't trust them anymore. The Russians have tampered. And remember, what is the real beginning of this? The real beginning of this is when they told us the Russians hacked the Democrat National Committee server and network. They have yet to provide any evidence for that. There has been not a scintilla, not a shred of evidence the Russians did the hacking. There hasn't been any evidence produced of what they got if they did hack. Since they began with this, the Russians hacked our servers. That set in motion everything that's happened since. And when the FBI sought permission to forensically examine the Democrat National Committee server, they were told no. They were told to go pound sand. The DNC said, we'll do it ourselves. And they hired a third-party forensic analysis firm called CrowdStrike, which has ties to the Democrat Party like Google and Facebook have ties to the Democrat Party. And CrowdStrike does their investigation. They come back and say Russians hacked. Democrats say, see, Russians hacked our server. Well, what'd they get? Well, we can't tell you that. Well, where's the evidence it was the right? Well, just trust us, it was. Then they planned, a year later, with George Papadopoulos, that the Russians have thousands of Hillary Clinton emails. There hasn't been any evidence of this produced, but this is the beginning of the investigation. They say it happened in July 2016 when Papadopoulos blabbed while drunk to the Australian ambassador, or that it happened with a Steele dossier, the FISA warrant spy on Carter Page. But it actually began, and remember, Devin Nunes is asking to see from the DOJ what they have that triggered this whole investigation. And he has oversight over it. There is no Department of Justice in the Constitution, folks. Let me give you a little civics lesson for those of you who may not know this. I don't mean to be insulting. The entire court system, the districts, the circuits, the locations created by Congress. There are no U.S. federal courts, district courts, appellate courts, and all that specifically spelled out in the Constitution. Congress was left to set that all up. There is no FBI in the Constitution. There is no Department of Justice in the Constitution. Congress established all of that, placed it in the executive branch. The president has authority over the executive branch, so he runs the FBI and the DOJ. Congress, because they set it up, has oversight. If Congress wanted to eliminate the FBI tomorrow, they could. We didn't have an Office of National Intelligence until after 9/11. After 9/11, George W. Bush and some others asked Congress to create the Office of National Intelligence, where we could take all the intel from the FBI to CIA, combine it into one place, and put that in the White House, essentially, which happened. Congress authorized it. That's why Clapper was able to get the gig, Director, National Intelligence. It's not in the Constitution. So when Devin Nunes, the chairman of a committee in the House on Intelligence and an elected representative of the people, demands to see what the DOJ has, he's thoroughly entitled to it. They have been stonewalling. Rod Rosenstein's been saying, no, you can't have it. It threatens national security. It might endanger people. You can't have it. Nunes has refused to accept that answer and has been striving for it, been trying for it, subpoenas, any number of things. They've been stonewalling. Then they leaked out this business about spy. But, Nunes on TV Sunday said they didn't tell him the name. And Nunes made a point of telling Maria Bartiromo, we have not sought the name of any spy. That's not what we want. That's not what we've asked them. We have not asked them to compromise any of their sources. We want to know what it is that started this. We want to see what they have on paper that got this whole Russia collusion investigation going. That's what the FBI will not produce. That's what Rosenstein will not produce. That's what Trump is now demanding be produced. And so Rosenstein today said, okay, we'll do it. You know what? I'm going to get an inspector general investigation going on this. Now, don't get your hopes up, because the IG report coming up is on the FBI Clinton email investigation. That investigation took 15 months. So another IG investigation, another 15 months to get to the bottom of what happened with this. And Rosenstein knows it. It's a play for a delay. But Trump is demanding it, and Rosenstein said, okay, we'll do it. And he said, yeah, if there was spying on a campaign going on here, we do need to know about it. About threw up. If there's spying on a campaign, we need to know about it. It's like Colonel Sanders. You mean there's chickens dying on my farm? Ha! Who knew? I'm going to look into that. I really thank you for telling me about it. It's like Dan Rather saying, do you know that the documents you're using are forged? Dan Rather, well, if that's true, I want to be the one to break that story. Dan, it's already broken. If there was spying on a presidential campaign, we're going to get to the bottom of it. Damn straight we are. That has prompted, who is this? Matt Gaetz is a Republican from Florida, congressman. He was on Bloomberg TV this afternoon saying this is bogus. We don't need an IG investigation. We need it's somebody 23. We need a second independent counsel investigation, not another IG investigation.
The problem with the president's tweet is that he literally directs the Department of Justice to investigate themselves. You're right that we've got plenty of investigations where the Justice Department and FBI are investigating themselves. What we need is a second special counsel, someone who can bring an independent look to the very serious allegations that have been brought to bear. If we really had people spying on a rival political campaign and trumping up allegations of foreign collusion that didn't exist, that would be very serious. And whether you're a Republican or a Democrat or an independent or a Whig, you should want to make sure that our institutions are strong enough so that we don't have this type of spying going on rival political campaigns in the future. But we need an independent special counsel to look at that, not someone who's housed in the Department of Justice.
Well, I agree with that. But how long is that going to take when we all know what happened here? But government moves at a snail's pace when it wants. It's another facet, by the way, of the deep state. It moves at a snail. We're supposed to think things can't happen quickly in government. It's just too important. It's too massive. It's too intricate. Very few people are qualified to run it. Blah, blah, blah. Let me take a brief time out. We'll come back and resume with people on the phones. Hang on, folks. Don't go away. By the way, there's other news going on out there. Donald Trump had a major victory over the Chicoms over the weekend, calling a ceasefire in what everybody thought was going to be an automatic trade war. The Chicoms blinked, and that's really all you need to know. And it's just another in the pro column, the accomplished column for Donald Trump. And you know, these rabid, these insane, unhinged leftists are being hit by a tsunami of achievements of this administration. They are drowning. They're being overrun, and they don't know it. Maybe some of them do. I'm telling you, they're gobsmacked. And it takes me back to a story from last week that I've been eagerly holding on to. Is by Andrew Sullivan. Obama's legacy has already been destroyed. And that's true. And it wasn't really that hard to do because Obama's legacy had no roots. I'll explain all that in greater detail, and I've got to share with you aspects of the Mark Penn piece today, stopping Robert Mueller to protect us all. It's great. Here's John in Port Huron, Michigan. Great to have you, John. I'm glad you waited. Hi.
Hi, Rush. I think you see John Brennan especially, but Clapper's not too far behind. They are in what I like to call pre-perp panic. They're doing everything to continue the distraction of the Russian collusion story to get away from where this is now headed, which is right at them and their ilk and people that were there and part of this. Two things longtime listeners know about you that you don't buy into, even when loyal listeners want you to. One is the electability of a third-party candidate. The other big one is the fact that you don't see a conspiracy around every corner. You never have. And when you saw this ridiculous Russian collusion story, I think you analyzed it the way you do. You did not buy into the conspiracy. What you said is, let's follow the money. What is the practical, real-world reason this is being done? At first, it looked like an excuse for Hillary, but I think it's obviously looking like a lot bigger thing than that. You have people who are on the inside. Think about a business or any other organization where they know there's going to be a new CEO or president coming in. They all want to do those things beforehand that are going to endear them to that person, put them close to power. Now, you multiply that times 1,000 when you're talking about the presidency of the United States, and they all were clamoring to be able to go in and say, look what I did. She was ready for a coronation, and it didn't work out. So now you've got to backtrack. And I think it's your ability to not see conspiracies that allows you to dissect things. And the Nunez situation is another example. That really opened my eyes. They were looking for a fall guy or a patsy to be another leaker, and that was going to be Devin Nunez. That was their distraction and their defense. What I was telling Snerdley when I called is that I think there's also an offensive component to that. And the offensive component is the deep state working behind the scenes with Clapper and all the other loyalists from the past administration to get them out there on the media to make this spy and to make this situation not only a push.
Hang on. I was hoping you would get there, you almost did, but hang on. Okay, we're going to go back to John in Port Huron. I want you to pick up where you said that you think there's an offensive part of this, too, that they're engaging in now, not just trying to cover their tracks and deflect people. What's the offensive part of this?
The break made me be able to do this quickly. Clapper is the quarterback. The offensive coordinators are the deep state members. They are feeding Clapper and other people like Clapper that came out of that mess with the previous administration with the information and the strategy on the spy within the campaign and everything that surrounds it. And that is this. Not only is it not a bad thing to spy on your political component, when there are huge things at stake like Russian collusion, it's a good thing. And the point person who was involved in the campaign, spying on the campaign, that is it actually going to be made into an American hero? And, oh, by the way, he's a Republican, so he must have been totally objective. And his only object was to save the democratic process in the United States. It's almost like making someone into a whistleblower. So not only is it not a bad thing anymore, it's a good thing. And anyone who participated in it, including Clapper and Brennan, are American heroes. And there it is. That's the offense. That's the story they have to run because it's getting too close to home.
I think that may be part of what's going on. It's clear that the original objective failed. The original objective was to get rid of Trump. And folks, do not doubt me on this. They thought they could get it done in 6 months. I could run through again why they thought they could. Remember, these people have incredible arrogance. And they are in their own personalities. You cannot intimidate them. They are everything. They know everything. They run everything. Nobody's in their league, and they're so powerful they can write whatever script they want and sell it to the drive-by media, have it run. And they were, I think, cock-certain that they were going to be able to get Trump hated and despised in the first 6 months by convincing people that his election was fraudulent because the Russians hated Hillary and wanted him to win because he's a doofus, and the Russians had blackmailable stuff on him, and the Russians are going to run rings, the Russians are going to devastate us because Trump was unprepared, unqualified, he's a boob, he's a rogue, he's all these horrible, rotten things, and look what the Russians did. It all starts with the Russians supposedly hacking the DNC server, blah, 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 blah. When that didn't work, well, now it's time for Plan B. And Plan B was to ramp it up and to flood the zone. And 4 different stories every day from anonymous sources deep inside the intelligence communities or whatever, furthering the idea that there was collusion by Russia with Trump. And the way they ratcheted it up was that Trump was working with Russia. That didn't work. Nothing they have tried. Then Mueller comes along, and I think the Mueller appointment was to cover up, to provide a cover-up for all of the efforts they had engaged in to try to get rid of Trump, such as informants and spies and using the media and all these abject lies, lying to a FISA court judge in order to get a warrant based on opposition research. They had to hustle to cover up the exoneration of Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton was guilty of so many felonies for which people are in jail. They had to distract people from that. They had to misdirect people away from it. They exonerated Hillary. They had made the decision early on she was not going to face charges. She was not going to be prosecuted. Nothing was going to happen. They had to cover that up. Now, the caller was very complimentary to your host, and I appreciate that, saying that one of the reasons I'm able to get down to the real nub of these things is that I don't subscribe to conspiracy theories or conventional wisdom. And he's exactly right. Can I tell you why the Russian collusion theory never worked on me? It's not possible. It's not possible to steal an election the way these people were setting it up to be done. And Obama himself said so. It simply isn't. Obama said so October 16, 2016, 3.5 weeks before the election. He made it clear. It simply would not be possible. It's no more complicated than that. Okay, if you don't think that's true, I want you to figure out for yourself how you would do it. You're sitting in Russia. You're Vladimir Putin. You've got agents everywhere. You can put agents wherever you want, and you're going to collude with one of the candidates in order to get him elected. You're going to make sure that when the votes are counted, your guy wins. How are you going to do that? How's anybody going to do that? It can't be done. And that, to me, is the real danger of all this. Look at the number of Americans, probably in the millions, who now think it not only can be done, but did happen and will happen again. These people, in their zeal to protect themselves, have destroyed the integrity of the American electoral process. And they keep adding to it because the Russian collusion story doesn't go away. And now, whenever anything unfortunate happens to the Democrats in an election or wherever, guess what the first excuse given is? The Russians. The Russians do not have the capability to do this. You wouldn't know where to go. You wouldn't know which precincts, which districts. Then you get to the Electoral College. The Electoral College is set up in part to make sure that population clusters like California of millions and millions of like-minded people are not given a greater percentage of weight in a presidential election than their proportion should be. That's the brilliance of the Electoral College. We're not a democracy. We are a republic. Elizabeth Warren is out there. Eliza Watha. Elizabeth Pocahontas, she's out there claiming that the system has already been corrupted because Hillary got more votes than Trump, and she should have been elected president. Something is desperately wrong in America. No, something is amazingly, brilliantly correct in America. The Electoral College was set up to make sure that small population centers, rural states, and so forth had a chance to be involved in who wins presidential elections. It was the Electoral College was devised precisely to make sure that, in this case, a whole bunch of liberals could not congregate in one place, California, and steal an election. The Electoral College is a brilliant function in our constitutional republic. How would you tamper with that? How would you wouldn't even know which states you're going to need to try to screw things. Our voting machines are not connected to the internet. How are you going to do it? To me, it was not possible. It is why I went on Fox News Sunday with Chris Wallace shortly after the first allegation was made. And I said, Chris, this is preposterous. Why isn't anybody thinking about this in practical terms? It isn't possible. Why is everybody accepting this premise? The Russians colluded and stole the election. Well, then it became the Russians colluded. Not and stole. They just colluded. They wanted to get Trump on colluding with the Russians to try to steal the election. They couldn't prove that. Now they're trying to prove obstruction. They can't prove that. Nothing they have alleged has happened, except on the Clinton side. There was collusion there. We all know this. This whole procedure is designed to cover that up, to make sure that eyes do not focus on that. That's the whole purpose of all of this now. And I think it's beginning to unravel in real terms. You may not see evidence of it if you watch news every day, but, folks, they have failed to get rid of Donald Trump. And I don't care whatever else you think about this. That is the big takeaway. They have failed to get rid. Now, they're not through trying. They still hope they can win the House in 2018 and prepare articles of impeachment and work their magic there. They haven't given up. But they have failed, and it's beginning to unravel. And now they are admitting all of these things, spies, this, that, and the other thing in the campaign. Now, Clapper comes along. Clapper, by the way, is not in the upper echelon. He's a foot soldier. I disagree with the caller about that. I don't think Clapper is one of the organizers. If you want to get to the top of this, you got to go to Barack Obama, folks. All of this happened under the auspices of Barack Obama. It's his FBI that did all this. It's his Department of Justice that did all this. It's his Attorney General that looked the other way. It's his Attorney General that met with Bill Clinton. It was his Attorney General. It was his Department of Justice and FBI that presented a phony document to the FISA court to get a warrant to spy on a member of the Trump campaign. This all happened while Barack Obama was in the White House. Some might want to, well, he might not have known Russia. Yeah, right, didn't know. So many aspects of this. Protect the Obama legacy, which is already gone now in some part. But it just hasn't, the whole premise to me has been easily refuted and rejected. And then when I see the groupthink latch onto it, okay, so the Democrat National Committee server is hacked. They tell us the Russians did it. They don't produce any evidence. And yet everybody begins operating on the theory the Russians hacked their server. And for a year and a half, 2 years, for 2 years, we've been operating on that. And there's any evidence for it. Nobody's once shown us any evidence. Nunes is asking. They won't show him. There isn't a shred of evidence for it. And everybody except the deep state, the deep media. Some in the Republican Party. To this day, they're Republicans that believe the Russians colluded. The Russians hacked. I mean, to the extent that they were able to shape the outcome of an election, I simply don't believe it's possible. I think Trump won legitimately. I think Trump won fairly. I think Trump won justly. Hillary Clinton was a lousy candidate. Hillary Clinton didn't inspire anybody. Hillary Clinton didn't fire anybody up. Hillary Clinton didn't excite anybody. Hillary Clinton didn't have the ability to do that. Donald Trump did. Everything about the Trump campaign had the word winner, the label winner attached to it. It made total sense that Donald Trump won. It didn't surprise me a bit. I predicted Trump was going to win 2 days after he came down the escalator and announced. Or whenever I first saw the polling data. When I saw a majority of Americans loved it, then I started seeing the rallies. It was not hard to see what was going on. But if you are distracted by narratives, distracted by conventional wisdom, if you are caught up in conspiracy theories, then you can easily get sidetracked here. But it's nothing more than common sense. Each and every day, observe it, act on it, and what happened made total sense. But to these in the deep state, it didn't make sense because it's not supposed to be able to happen. They have it wired in their minds. They've got it rigged. They can't lose. That's why they have the power to make sure even when they lose, they don't really lose. But if you want to get to the architect of this, if you want to find out where this actually began, if you want to find out who had to okay and authorize all of this, then you've got to find your way to the Obama White House Oval Office, because that's the origin. We'll be back. Stand by in a second. I'm going to tell you who I think did hack the Democrat server. In fact, I think we already know. People have just forgotten. But I don't think Brennan, I think Brennan is panicking. Trump is right. And Clapper is following. I think Comey is panicking right now. And if I didn't know better, I would say Mueller thinks he's in a tight spot. They didn't ever expect this spy stuff to come out. You can't convince me that they did. This stuff was never supposed to hit, the stuff that the Post and the New York Times ran on Thursday and Friday last week. You kidding me that they ever intended that to happen, that there were spies, informants running around in the Trump campaign? That was never supposed to come out. They dropped that to try to lessen the impact of it when it's real news, whether it's in the upcoming IG report or some other investigation down the road. They didn't expect any of this. They didn't expect what they were doing in this regard to ever be understood or known or uncovered by anybody. They didn't think Devin Nunes would survive their attempts to destroy him. They didn't think he would stick with it. They didn't think that he would keep bulldogging them to find out what the hell was really going on here. So now they have to get ahead of it. So they send Clapper out there to tell everybody that it's a good thing we had a spy in the Trump campaign. And we weren't spying on Trump. We love Trump. We were trying to protect Trump. Do not insult my intelligence. You hate Donald Trump. You've hated Donald Trump since before he ran for office. Now you really hate him. And after he survived the Access Hollywood video, you have so much hate that it spits out of you. It oozes out of every pore and orifice in your body. You hate the guy. You weren't trying to protect him. If you're worried about the Russians spying on, why the hell didn't you turn the Clinton campaign upside down and have a spy inside her campaign? You people are lying through your teeth. You weren't trying to protect anything. You're now trying to get out in front of this by saying what you did was altruistic. What you did was patriotic. You were saving your country. You were protecting your country from those evil, dastardly Russians, who only marginally worse than those evil, dastardly Republicans. I mean, you people may think everybody's saps because so many people in the drive-by media eat up this garbage you spew each and every day, but I'm telling you, your average Trump voter is not buying one morsel of this rotten concoction that you are selling, spreading, or what have you. We've been inoculated. We have all been inoculated against a disease that is drive-by media infectious. We are immune to it. A lot of people aren't. And you get away with it with some of them. But this is so feeble. We were trying to protect Trump. Right. James Comey, Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, Sally Yates, Andrew McCabe were trying to protect Donald Trump. I don't know what kind of idiots you think you're dealing with, but you're going to have to try something else, and you're going to have to try somebody better at this than Clapper. Well, yeah, I think it's a very good thing. Spying, very valuable lessons learned. As to who hacked the Democrat National Committee server, it was Democrat National Committee employees, people hired by Debbie Blabbermouth Schultz. It was the Pakistanis. Folks, the Pakistanis hacked the Democrat National Committee servers, and I will explain before the program ends today. Yes, my friends, the Awan brothers, Abid, Imran, and Jamel, Pakistani immigrant kids that Debbie Blabbermouth Schultz hired and let into her world. And they made off with all the computer info from all of the DNC and 80 different Democrat congresspeople. And they're back in Pakistan now. There was a brief story about this one. It's been already forgotten and overlooked, but you look at it, you'll see. All right, here we are back at it. Rearing and ready to go. Rush Limbaugh, household name, all four corners of the world. By the way, I'm just announcing this right now. Nobody knows this, but they will in a moment. We're going to replay the call from Jerome tomorrow. Now, we got Jerome from Traverse City, Michigan, who claimed while in prison, in segregation, he was almost in solitary confinement. Listening to this radio program turned his life around. I can't tell you the amount of feedback over this, over the weekend that I received over this, which, and thankfully so. I'm gratified so many people heard it. And Ben Shapiro's website, the Daily Wire ran a piece on it. BizPack Networks, Nerdly, somebody, they ran a piece on it, I think, on Sunday, because it was profound. 24 years old, been in jail all of his life, African-American, had no hope for the future because everybody in his family told him that the world was stacked against him and Trump thought he was scum, Republicans thought he was scum, and he believed it all until they took away his television privileges in segregated prison. And all he had was AM/FM radio, and he got sick and tired of same playlists over and over on FM radio, so he thought that he would just scour talk shows because that might come closer to TV programming and anything he could find. And he stumbled across this program. It changed his life. And he called to tell us about it. It was one of the most gratifying calls I've had in the 29 years we've been doing this. And we posted it on our Facebook page. We put it at rushlimbaugh.com. But I've decided I want to re-air the call. I don't know when, probably the second, because the call happened in the third hour on Friday. So we'll air it a different hour tomorrow, or first hour, second hour. But, I mean, it's spine-tingling. And what made me think of this, we're assembling the package of items. He's got a 3-year-old niece that loves Liberty from the Rush Revere book. So we're going to send a whole Liberty package and a Revere package. And he was very proud he had his own phone now. And I said, what kind is it? It's a Samsung S9. I said, that's a big screen phone? He said, yeah. I said, well, I'm going to send you a couple of Apple iPhones and choose from one if you want to use it. I'm going to send him an 8 Plus and an iPhone 10. Both of them are big screen. And we're putting those together. And Jerome, I know you're out there because you want your life to stay changed. So you keep listening here each and every day. Jerome, I want you to know both these phones have no SIM card in them. They're totally unlocked. So you can, I think, take the SIM card out of your Samsung and put it in the iPhone, whichever one you choose, and it'll work. But there'll be a note in there from me explaining all of that. So if you weren't here Friday and didn't hear about it, we've still got the call linked at rushlimbaugh.com and easily accessible on the rushlimbaugh.com app. By the way, you want to hear something? I have to share this with you because if I don't, nobody else will. We have reached peak subscribers at rushlimbaugh.com. We're in our 30th year now, 29th year, whatever it is. We have more subscribers for rushlimbaugh.com and the Limbaugh letter than we've ever had. Now, you would think the peak would have been way back years ago when we just opened this stuff and made it available, and the initial rush of subscribers based on interest would have happened then. But it's the same thing with the audience. Since the Trump election, the audience here is continuing to grow. Normally after elections, audiences trail off a little bit. Not this show so much, but traditionally in the business, elections draw people that listen only at that time of the year, and then they go back and do something else. We're holding them. And it's almost like a second version or a rebirth with what is happening with subscribers at the website, and the app is continuing. I mean, people are downloading the app out the wazoo as well. And it is a great app. And podcasts that are available each and every day that after the program's over that you can listen to in that format if you wish. All accessible from the rushlimbaugh.com app, either on iPhone or Android. But it's just gratifying, folks. And I just wanted to say thanks and take a brief moment to let you know that you are all part of this at peak EIB. Isn't that amazing? Peak EIB in the 29th year. Now, two things on the hack of the Democrat National Committee server. You will not find, if you Google the Awan brothers from Pakistan, you won't find many stories. It's being totally ignored. But there were 3 brothers from Pakistan, and they were hot-to-trot computer specialists. They were IT stars. Debbie Blabbermouth Schultz hired them and put them on the payroll. And they may not have been the ones to hack. I will not be surprised if it is eventually learned that these guys did it. They're gone now. They are back in Pakistan. They were fired when it was discovered what they had done. Debbie Blabbermouth Schultz hires them. These kids from Pakistan made off with all kinds of computer data from all over the DNC, and anywhere from 44 to 80 Democrat Congress people had their data stolen, and in some cases, even the hardware, the computers themselves were stolen. They were paid millions of dollars to have access to these computers because they were the IT specialists. They were the people charged with keeping the Democrats' equipment up and running, keeping all of the software updates current, and making sure that maintenance was done on the network and on the hardware. There were a lot of red flags about these people. They're Pakistani Muslims, but they were given carte blanche is the point. The story was reported some time ago, the original theft and the fact that these guys left Washington. One of them, I think, left Washington under cover of darkness once they had been discovered, and they're in Pakistan where they will not be extradited back. The story has been completely and totally covered up. It was very embarrassing to the DNC when it happened, and so the drive-bys have ignored the story. Now, I'm going to give myself a caveat. It may not be these guys, the Awan brothers. Again, their names are Groucho, Zeppo, and Harper. No, their names are Abid, Imran, and Jamel. I was confusing them with the Marx brothers. They were kids. Awan, A-W-A-N, brothers. And they did have, there is information that they were involved in theft of Democrat National Committee data. But the important thing is that this investigation, if you really, really want to get back to the starting point, was when Democrats said that the Russians hacked their servers. Same time the RNC servers were attacked, but unsuccessfully. And not to be redundant, but the Democrats refused to let the FBI forensically examine any of the network data that would, have digital footprints that would maybe identify who came in and hacked data. And the hardware was there. Nobody made off with the server. Nobody made off with the hardware of the network. It was all there. Just the data had been hacked and stolen. We've been told from the get-go the Russians did the hacking. And they did it to help Trump win. And everybody just accepted it. There has yet to be, do not doubt me, there has yet to be any evidence furnished that the Russians did the hacking. Now, in the course of staying up to speed on this, I can't tell you how much about it, so much that I can't remember where I read some things. But one of the most telling pieces of information, CrowdStrike was the third-party outfit that the Democrats hired to forensically examine their server. And CrowdStrike is who said that it looked to them like Russia or Guccifer 2.0, some people pretending to be the Russians maybe did it. And in this story, and it might have been in The Intercept, can't say for sure, but it was in more than one story I read, reported that the transfer speed of the data was such and such. If you're going to go in and hack data, what are you going to do? You're going to find a way into the host computer, and then you're going to find a way to transfer that data back to your server. And if you're hacking, you're going in via the internet. So your speeds, your transfer speeds, are going to be totally dependent on your router equipment and what kind of connection the Democrat National Committee server has. Was it fiber? Was it gigabit Ethernet? Was it DSL? We don't know. But regardless, the maximum transfer speeds can be easily calculated. Well, the transfer speeds that were reported by CrowdStrike are impossible over the internet. And if you spend time Googling this and delving into this yourself, you will stumble across this fact. The speed at which the data that was stolen from the server was transferred are speeds that are impossible over the internet. And there are not super secret, literally wicked fast networks that super spies have, that nobody else has, that have speeds that approach what these are reported to be. The speeds that were reported, the speeds that CrowdStrike reported, the data transfer is identical to the speed if you're writing something to a DVD or a thumb drive over USB. Now, you can copy massive amounts of data very fast over USB to either a DVD or a thumb drive. You can transfer a couple terabytes in not very long, but over the internet, it would take impossibly longer. But the forensic data is there. The transfer speed data is there, and it simply is not possible over the internet. So what does this mean? It means it had to be an inside job. It had to be somebody with access to the hardware, to the server, to computers. It had to be somebody who could plug in a thumb drive or an optical drive, a DVD or what have you, a CD, and write the data that way. Because if it's over the internet, it would have the amount of data we're talking about here, and we still don't know specifically what was even hacked. They at first tried to tell us that it was the Podesta emails, but they were not part of this hack. The Podesta emails, which is all anybody knows that the Democrats had, came because Podesta screwed up and clicked on a bad link in an email he had received, a phishing attack that he fell for. And he gave outside players access to his computer. And that's how they were able to get all of his emails that ended up at WikiLeaks and then in the public domain. But that was not part of the Democrat National Committee hack. We still don't know the data that was hacked from the DNC. They haven't even told us that. They just told us the Russians did it and that CrowdStrike proved it, and that's it. They've shown no evidence. This is, again, what Devin Nunes is demanding to see from the DOJ. He's demanding to see a 1- or 2-page document, however long it is, that actually explains why this investigation began. We now know it's not the Steele dossier because the investigation began long before that FISA application. We know it's not Papadopoulos blabbing to the Australian ambassador because we now know the investigation started months before Papadopoulos got drunk in the bar and started talking about his knowledge of the Clinton emails being in the possession of the Russians, which he didn't know until the FBI spies told him. So this investigation, the official investigation, began long before anything they publicly said. The real thing began when they claimed their server was hacked. But we don't know by who, and we don't know what they got. And that's what Nunes wants. Somewhere in the DOJ is a document explaining what justifies this investigation, what eventually justified the special counsel, what justified the FISA warrant application. What was it? Nunes has been stonewalled for almost a year on this. That's what he did not ask for the name of the spy. He did not seek to out anybody. They did that on their own, which brings me to one final thing. Earlier, we made the point that Nunes was actually targeted when the DOJ invites him and Gowdy up last week to see some of this documentation. They didn't show them anything. But shortly after Gowdy and Nunes had their little meeting with DOJ Rosenstein, then the New York Times and Washington Post stories ran. They were trying to peg the leak to the media of the FBI, the DOJ having a spy in the Trump campaign. They wanted to blame that leak on Nunes to discredit him and take him out of the investigation. It failed. You're saying, how do you know that? There hadn't been anything about, oh, yes. You remember the name Benjamin Wittes, W-I-T-T-E? Yes, you do. He's Comey's best friend at Columbia. Oh, wait a minute. That may be Richmond. But Ben Wittes runs a legal website, Lawfare, Lawview, Law U, whatever it is. And he had some tweets last weekend and over the weekend. He's almost certainly, what did he say? Don't have the actual tweets, but in his tweets, he blamed Nunes for leaking this stuff to the New York Times and Washington Post. There's no question that he was setting this up. He was part of the plan to blame it on Nunes and essentially Trump. Ben Wittes basically tweeted that Devin Nunes is responsible for outing Stephen Halper. Wittes doesn't know who the source is. He was just a useful tool tweeting this. Make no mistake, they were trying to lay this off on Nunes. It would have been the leak of all leaks. If they could blame the House Intelligence Committee guy for leaking this kind of data and outing a spy, that's what they were trying to do. It didn't work. We'll be back. We have a brand new app. And back to the phones we go, since I had verbal diarrhea for the previous minutes of this half hour. This is Ted in Lynchburg, Virginia. Ted, great to have you here.
Hey, how you doing? Say, try this theory on for size.
Okay.
The dynamite's in the bleached bit emails that Hillary ditched from her private server.
Right.
The Obama and Clinton outfit was concerned that that server had gotten hacked and that the Russians had highly dangerous information on the both of them. Now, what would the Russians do with this information?
Okay, wait, stop. I want to make sure I know what you're thinking, that Obama and Hillary might think her server had been hacked by the Russians because it was unprotected, it was private in her basement.
That's why she bleached bit it. That stuff is dynamite.
Well, she bleach bitted it also to keep anybody from finding out what she had. She's trying to protect herself from having passed classified documents.
Of course. So she's trying to protect whatever information is in those. If the Russians did have it, they wouldn't have told them. So if they put an ear in the Trump campaign, they might, number one, get a heads up if the Russians were actually going to try and pass any damaging information from her server into the campaign to be used in the election. And number two, to set Trump up as a bad actor, in other words, the same old attack the messenger strategy that they always use. If the Russians used Trump to spill any of the damaging information that she bleach-bitted and hope nobody in the world would ever see, then they could attack Trump. I think the information that was in her server that was bleach-bitted is why they went to the mat on this so soon, because they had to make sure that stuff didn't get out.
I've only got one problem with your theory. Your theory revolves or requires a belief that the Russians were easily able of infiltrating a campaign.
No, that's not it.
Okay, well, hang on, because I've got a break coming up in 10 seconds, and don't try to squeeze it in. Let me take a break here, and we'll get right back to this. Just a couple, 3 minutes here, because I want to make sure I understand your premise before I render a reaction to it. So don't go away out there, Ted. Hang on. We'll get back to Ted here in Lynchburg, Virginia, in just a minute. We're talking about data breaches here. They happen to you, too. Sometimes you can get hacked. And most of the time, however, you're not going to be the target. Most of the time, your data is going to be part of a massive database, and a business or some other kind of organization that keeps all of the payment data, login data, passwords, and so forth of all their customers or clients on the internet. And they are targeted. Massive numbers, big databases are targeted, not you per se. Although you could be. Somebody could swipe your credit card at a restaurant. You don't know that it's happened. Swipe it while your card's on the way to the cash register to be swiped, if that still happens at places you go. They're getting rid of swiping and using, no signature Apple Pay type formats. But there are ways you can be targeted. Most time you're not. And because of that, you don't know. You don't know when your data has been stolen. You don't know when you have been defrauded. And you may not know for 30 days until your credit card bill comes in. Or if they can open a bank account in your name. Any number of types of fraud can happen after your database, your data has been stolen from a massive database. Many of these outfits don't announce these thefts for months. And the thieves do not use it. They collect it all and sell it to thieves. All this takes time. So how can you find out if you've been victimized this way? There is a way, and it's called LifeLock. The number of entities suffering some kind of data breach is not going down. It's increasing. Retail chains are getting better at protecting their data, but cities, school districts, hospitals, they remain vulnerable. You become a LifeLock member. You give them all of your data, your numbers, credit card numbers, Social Security, and so forth. What happens is a profile is automatically created after not too long a period of time. The way you use your credit cards, the way you interact with businesses and so forth on the internet, there is basically a profile that's created. How much money you spend every month, where it goes, this kind of. Nobody is studying you personally. This is all computer information. When your stuff is stolen and somebody starts using your data, that causes a spike in that profile. And then the LifeLock computers are alerted, and that's when people get involved and start letting you know that you may have been hacked, you may have been defrauded, and ask you if you recently spent X, where, and so forth. And if you did, you say, yeah, but it's me, and everybody goes away. But if it's not you, that's when you are so happy you're a LifeLock member, because they start tracking it down. They literally try to stop it in its tracks, and sometimes they succeed. But no one can stop all theft, cyber or otherwise, at all businesses. But I'm telling you, nobody is better at this than LifeLock. And if something gets past them, they've got what they call the restoration team that works with you until it's all fixed and put back in order. It's only $9.99 a month. And if you use my name when you sign up, you get 10% off. And they've added Norton security now to your computers, your hardware. That protects against malware, ransomware. So LifeLock is a one-stop hub, and it is awesome what it does. And there isn't anybody better. And it's peace of mind before, during, and after any kind of problem. Call them at 800-440-4833. Remember, use my name, get 10% whacked off of there, or LifeLock.com, either way. But make sure you use my name. Okay, back to Ted in Lynchburg. Ted, set this up for me again.
Okay.
Because where I got confused is you seemed to justify the FBI spying on Trump.
No, that's not what I'm trying to do.
Right.
With the number one, let's assume that there is potentially extremely damaging material on Hillary Clinton's private server. Comey testified that they determined that server had been accessed by unauthorized individuals.
True.
I don't remember any details. So let's assume that, to be on the safe side, Clinton and Obama figure we have to assume the worst, that the Russians got into my private server and that they have damaging material. One of the channels that the Russians might seek to use that material could theoretically be the Trump campaign. If you get an ear in the Trump campaign, you might be able to get a heads up as to whether that might be the channel that the Russians could use to disseminate damaging information that they got from her private server. It achieves another successful point, though, too, from their point of view, by having Trump campaign potentially compromised if it is used by the Russians. And even if it isn't used by the Russians, they have a great story that they can use to attack Trump with. and that's what they've done. So I'm suggesting that the root of this is whatever that information is on the private server that she panicked when she got that subpoena and she got the bleach bid out and she erased 30,000 emails. The information that's in those emails is what the FBI was trying to protect Hillary against.
Is what Obama was trying to protect Hillary. Okay, so let me repeat it back to you and see if I understand it. Hillary Clinton's server is compromised. Comey admits it. He admitted a lot of things. We're going to assume that among the bad actors that got into her server were the Russians. The minute they find out this happened, they go out and get BleachBit, a program. They try to wipe all of the contents of the server after it's been hacked. They still BleachBit it so that what they have to turn over to the FBI is innocuous and nothing. And there's no trouble there. But meanwhile, under your theory, the Russians now have theoretically compromising data on Hillary Clinton from her.
They have to assume that, the worst case, yes.
Okay, they would assume it. So the FBI, Hillary, Obama, they want to find out. So the best way to find out is put a spy in the Trump campaign to find out if the Russians try to use any of that with the Trump people.
It would be one of the potential channels the Russians could use to damage her.
Why?
I think it's just protection. I think the Russians, if they did have damaging material, would hold it until after she was elected.
I do, too, because they had already invested in her campaign. They expected her to win. They were trying to destroy her. Nobody thought she was going to lose.
That's right. But they don't want to take the risk that maybe some of it could come out, and they wanted to have a heads up. If it came through the Trump campaign, they wanted to be able to discredit the messenger by yelling collusion.
Okay, so your theory, if not justifies, explains why the Obama people would have somebody implanted in the Trump campaign. Just keep an eye out for anything they knew would come from the Hillary server. And then they get a double whammy because if it happens, they can then blame Trump for being in collusion with the Russians when Trump doesn't know anything about it.
Right. And if he gets elected, and the odd chance he gets elected, they can also flip this whole thing and use it as they have done with the whole Russia collusion nonsense.
Well, they clearly have tried that.
But my point is that the impetus behind all this is to find out and to cover up whatever those 30,000 emails. When Trump made that joke about maybe the Russians have them, they went ballistic.
Yeah, but it was, I want to be precise here. Trump, remember, everybody was whining that they couldn't find 33,000 emails.
Right. So
Trump jams them and is laughing at them and is saying, hey, maybe Russia, maybe you can find those 33,000. And you're right. They blew up. They lost their cookies. They didn't see any humor in it, and they immediately turned that into Trump asking the Russians to hack her.
Right, because they're afraid I think there's blackmail gold in those 30,000 emails that have been bleach bitted, and they're worried. They still are worried that any of that stuff might come out
because it incriminates them, not Trump.
It incriminates them, yes.
But in the process, they get to, if it surfaces, they get to blame Trump for being in collusion. And so that might explain when the Russian honeypot Velitsneskaya shows up to talk to Trump Jr., they might have legitimately thought, oh, my God, here it comes. They got data from Hillary, and that's what they're going to feed Trump Jr.
Yep.
Well,
I think it accounts for that. I think it's a logical explanation because they didn't think she was going to lose, but they wanted to have this stuff pushed off past the election, too.
The one thing that is missing in this, and I'm not rejecting your theory because I think your gambit clearly has potential. But the one thing missing in it is that these people were not hoping something happened. They set out to destroy Trump. Their purpose before the election and since has been to destroy him. They weren't just sitting around waiting to see if something happened. They were trying to force things to happen, like planting with Papadopoulos. Yep. The idea the Russians had the emails.
Kill two birds with one stone.
Covering it from all angles,
yep,
so to speak. All right, well, Ted, that's interesting. The thing that's really, really interesting here is that the focus of their fear is what might have been stolen from Hillary's server Because remember, Obama and everybody's communicating with her on this server. And Obama has to be protected because Obama told everybody he didn't know she was doing this until he read about it in the news. But the fact is he was sending classified data back and forth with her on this server, and he knew it was a private server in the bathroom in Chappaqua. He knew, as did everybody else at the State Department. So much of this is about protecting Obama from getting caught lying about this as well and being culpable. It wasn't just Hillary trafficking in classified data. It was everybody that she was working with. They all knew. Okay. So that the idea that the real focus of interest from all these clowns is Hillary's server, for which she's been totally exonerated, by the way, is what they're really interested in, not so much the DNC servers. Back in a moment.
It look easy, but it's not. Rush on the EIB network.